Okay. Mayor Mulder, how are you?
Justin, great to be with you.
Thanks for joining me. I haven't sat down with you since you announced, so let me take you back. First of all, when did you announce?
September 4th.
How long had it been on your mind when you decided to get in this race?
Well, that's a great question. Running for Congress was not really something on my radar at the start of the calendar year anyway. I've been mayor now for 2 terms, mayor of my hometown. It's been just a unique honor to be able to serve as the mayor of the community where I grew up in. And really, I knew I wasn't going to run for re-election and really had made the decision to just go back into private practice in my day job. But over the last several months, as Congressman Ogles continued to frustrate me, just seemingly being in office for the wrong reasons, chasing national headlines for the wrong reasons instead of local headlines from the right reasons, embarrassing us, it seems like every time he opened his mouth. And I decided that we needed a congressman who was going to focus on the issues that matter, Justin. Issues such as affordability, cost of groceries, healthcare accessibility. We need a congressman who would focus on those issues, and he was not doing that, and so I decided that it was time to step up to the plate.
So it's fair to say that who we call Pinocchio Ogles, being the current congressman, that played a big role in why you finally decided to do this?
Oh, absolutely. As the mayor of Columbia, I've seen firsthand of the issues that are important to our congressional district, issues that he seemingly is unwilling to focus on. As I say, he seems to be running to stay out of jail, and I'm running to lower costs. He is someone that is focused on seemingly everything except what's truly important to the voters of this district, issues that we're talking about on a daily basis and we're hearing about from voters everywhere we go. Nashville, Columbia, and everywhere in between. And so I think that the voters are going to have a clear choice in this race to vote for someone who's going to really stand up for them in Washington.
So you're kind of a rare bird in that you're a Democratic mayor in a pretty conservative city in Tennessee. How did that happen?
Well, I think it's because we've focused on issues that matter. We've brought people together. We've focused on practical solutions over partisan politics. I think people will vote for the person that they think is willing to focus on issues that are important to them. And really and truly, that's why I think we have the best opportunity to defeat Andy Ogles, is because we've proven that we can win tough elections. Columbia and Murray County is a very Republican territory, and we won in 2018 with over 60% of the vote. In 2022, we were reelected with similar margins because people know that we get in there and we focus on issues that matter to them and that are important and that bring the community together instead of tearing them apart.
It's been wild. Trump's level of support, especially in Tennessee, hasn't really gone anywhere. Do you think anything is breaking through? Do you think the messages of corruption, the fact that he seemed to want people to go hungry, he was suing over this food stamp issue, do you think anything is breaking through? What are you hearing in Republican parts of Columbia?
Well, I think the SNAP benefit issue is one that is truly starting to resonate. Of course, it's still very early over the last several days, but people realize now, the Republicans, including Andy Ogles, were willing to truly let kids go hungry over politics. And I think that's where people are so disgusted with Washington, D.C. People are unhappy with people like Andy Ogles because Andy Ogles was willing for kids to go hungry, keep the government closed, and not fund essential basic functions of what the government should do. And I think there's a lot of frustration that's brewing. I think this campaign will be one that we're going to be able to focus on issues, and we have the winning message in that regard.
A couple hours ago, 8 Democrats, Senate Democrats, decided that they're going to vote to essentially open the government without getting much in return after a 40-day shutdown. What do you think about the decision by these 8 Senate Democrats vote to open the government, even though it still means that healthcare prices are going up?
I think that's why there's really a lack of trust in Washington, D.C. right now. First and foremost, the fact that the government was closed in the first place. And then the fact that government was closed for 40 days and there was really nothing to show for it. Healthcare costs are still going to be skyrocketing. People want a government that works for them, working to lower cost. And it seems like what we're hearing in the early developments here is that there's really nothing to show for it that we're getting in return for agreeing to reopen the government.
So you would not have been on board for a shutdown?
Well, look, I'm for reducing healthcare costs, and I think that the voters last week sent a clear message that it was a fight worth having, that the expiration of the ACA subsidies was something that they needed to stand firm on and fight for. I think the voters sent a clear signal on that. It seems like that's just been given up now, and they're not getting anything in return.
One of the things that I feel like has been highlighted by this shutdown fight is how broken our healthcare system is. Democrats were fighting to keep costs lower. On some level, that's kind of tinkering around the edges of a broken healthcare system. Tennessee, I think, is number one in medical bankruptcies in the whole country. What's your feeling about the healthcare system in general? And then specifically something like a Medicare for all. Is that something you could see yourself supporting if you get up there?
Well, I think that to your point, people see that the system is broken. I was speaking with a voter last week who got their premium notice in the mail, and literally they are now going to have to make a decision whether to fund their healthcare premium or have other essential basic necessities, and they're going to choose those basic necessities over their healthcare premium, which means they'll go uninsured, which means they won't have health insurance, which means that will increase the cost for everyone, whether you're uninsured or not. And so I think these real world implications are going to start having an impact, start resonating with voters, and it will be candidates like me who are fighting for reduced healthcare costs and for greater accessibility to healthcare who will start to resonate and I think start winning elections across the country, even in conservative areas, like you said, here in Tennessee.
I'm going to try to pin you down on the Medicare for all of it all. Have you given any thought to that particular policy?
Well, I think that's a policy certainly that's worth having a conversation about. I think we want to make sure that the marketplace remains competitive so that costs can remain down. Any policy that will decrease healthcare costs is a policy I can get behind.
One of the things that I've asked everybody in the primary too is your thoughts about another difficult topic, the Gaza AIPAC of it all. I'm a Jew. My grandparents survived the Holocaust. I have family in Israel. I'm concerned about the hold that AIPAC has on people. What are your feelings about AIPAC, taking AIPAC money, and Gaza in general?
I think what we saw on October the 7th was an absolute tragedy, and any time we have that kind of loss of life is something that should cause all of us to stand up and speak out against it. With respect to accepting AIPAC funds, it's not something that I'm going to do. I think that we have to make sure we're electing representatives who are willing to be an independent voice and who are willing to stand up for what they know and feel is right, and that's just not something that I'm going to do.
You have a primary. What sets you apart in the primary?
Well, I think voters are going to vote for the person in the primary that they think can most effectively prosecute the case against Andy Ogles. And I think that we present that best case. I'm someone who's won in tough Republican territory. I'm someone who has evidenced an ability to raise the necessary resources to fight in a general election. And I'm someone from a rural area that understands the rural values, but can also bridge a gap between that rural and urban divide.
Tariffs, trade war, they're really hurting farmers. Tennessee Republicans have not stood up against the tariff policy, against the trade war. Instead, they sent a letter to Trump basically supporting it and asking him for a bailout. How do you feel about the trade war, the tariffs, and what they're doing to farmers in Tennessee?
Well, I think that's another issue, Justin, that is going to be one that we're going to prevail on. You may have seen a couple weeks ago the Tennessee cattleman industry spoke up against the policies that the president is articulating, that Andy Ogles is supporting, that is hurting the Tennessee farmer. Columbia is the headquarters of the Tennessee Farm Bureau Federation. I've grown up in Columbia. I know the issues that are important to farmers, and there are issues that are important to me. The tariff issue that Andy Ogles is fighting for, not going to resonate well. I think it's creating uncertainty in our global economy, which is trickling down to uncertainty in our local economy as well.
The Farm Bureau, do they speak for the farmers generally?
Yeah, I think the Farm Bureau Federation is an organization that is a voice for agriculture, certainly with respect to agricultural issues, but I think the farmer also speaks out for themselves. I think that they're looking for candidates and people in Congress who are willing to speak out for the agriculture industry. I've spoken with Tennessee Farm Bureau Federation. They know that I will be an advocate for them, and I've already been doing so throughout my time running for Congress while I've been the mayor of Columbia, and intend to do that as a congressman as well.
So we're talking as though elections are going to matter. How do you feel about what level of alarm we should be at in terms of the authoritarianism and the Trump regime? Where's your level of alarm for our democracy?
Well, I think the level of alarm for me is the fact that Andy Ogles is articulating support for a third term. It goes against what the Constitution says. It seems like Andy Ogles is more interested in sucking up to someone instead of fighting for our congressional district. And so I think my focus is ensuring that we're fighting for the people of this district and fighting for the issues that matter, lowering costs, providing healthcare accessibility and affordability, and not getting lost in political talking points that Andy Ogles likes to focus on, but instead let people of this district know that we're going to fight for them.
What did you think of him posting that video of the plane flying into the tower on 9/11 as a way to attack Zoran?
Yeah, I think it's another example of he's focused on on issues outside of this 5th congressional district because he has no message to run on. He's not able to articulate a message where he's fighting to lower costs because he has not done that. And so instead he's focusing on external issues that have no impact on the people of this congressional district. And that's why I'm running, because I want to be a voice for people in this district to send someone to Washington, D.C. who's going to fight for them.
Ogles, generally speaking, has not shown much of a commitment to the truth. Does character matter?
Absolutely. He is someone who, again, is fighting to stay out of jail instead of fighting for the people of this district. I think he's someone who's evidenced a disregard for really what matters and what is important in this congressional district. He's someone who's under federal investigation for campaign finance laws. He's not answered to his GoFundMe fundraising that he raised funds, and still to this day has not accounted for where those funds have gone.
The child burial?
Right, about with the GoFundMe account. At the end of the day, people want to elect someone that they feel like is representative of their district, someone that they can trust, someone who's transparent. What I've learned as being the mayor of my hometown is if you're not transparent and if you're not honest, then nothing else matters. I may make decisions that from time to time someone might not agree with, but they're always going to know where I stand and why I stand there. And I think that's something that Andy Ogles has not done, and what a lot of people in Washington have not done. And while there's so much distrust with the Congress right now, we represent a new generation of thinking and a new generation of leadership. And I think that's why we've seen so much momentum and so many people that are getting behind this cause.
What was your reaction when he called you a Marxist?
That we're winning. I think the fact that he's calling us out on Twitter is an indication that he's worried. We have a lot of momentum in this race and that he's paying attention.
Do you think he knows what a Marxist is if you asked him?
That's the irony, is if you asked him to define what it is, he probably couldn't tell you. What he thinks is that it's a talking point that gets him political points, and I think what he's going to find out come November of 2026 is that those days are over, because we're running a campaign that's focused on issues, a campaign that is going to have the resources necessary to compete with him all the way through November. The fact that he's calling us names on Twitter might make him feel good now, but he's going to realize that that's not going to resonate with the voter, because the voters are tuned in. The voters are paying attention to the candidates who are articulating a message that is resonating because a message that is important to them. And that's the campaign that we're running and why right now we're running so well.
What does it change if it's not him? Seem to have recruited former Ag Commissioner Charlie Hatcher to run in this race. To me, that looks like even Republicans are embarrassed by Ogles and may want someone else. What does it change if it's not Ogles?
What I've learned, Justin, is that voters want not just to vote against something, but to be able to vote for something. And so what we know is this can't just be an anti-Andy campaign. That has been attempted in the past and has not been successful. And so our campaign is running on a message that's going to give voters a reason to vote for something. Andy Ogles provides a lot of fodder. His campaign investigation, the fact that he's running to stay out of jail, and there are certainly issues that will be easy to talk about that he's sort of provided for us on a silver platter. But I think more importantly, what we're trying to do is run on a campaign message that lets voters know that for the first time, they're going to have an opportunity to vote for something that they can believe in and get behind, and send someone to Washington who's going to fight for them.
People who haven't been in Columbia, they don't know Mayor Mulder. The rest of the district, what should they know?
What they see is what they get. And I am honest and transparent, and someone who is living the dream of being the mayor of his hometown, who's having a great time doing it, who's having a lot of fun working for the community in which they grew up in to make it a better place to live, work, and raise a family. I want to take that to Washington, D.C., sort of on those Middle Tennessee values that I grew up in, and go to Washington to be someone that they don't have to be offended by or embarrassed by, but be proud to call their congressman.
And what's something we should know about Craig Fitzhugh that we don't know?
I
had to drop a Craig Fitzhugh.
If there's one bigger UT Vol fan in the country than me, it may be Craig Fitzhugh, and I'm willing to admit that.
All right, good luck to you,
Justin.
Mulder.
Thank you, buddy.
For doing this.
Thanks so much.
CHAZ Mulder, everybody.